Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I would like to just offer a personal "you were right, I was wrong" to everyone who told me, Steph, Chris, everyone who told me, you can stop watching Game of Thrones anytime you want. You don't have to make it all the way to the ending. You were right, I was wrong. I definitely should not have made it all the way to the ending because I forgot how insulting and fucking garbage the final episode is. It can't be as bad as I remember it being when I first watched it in 2019. Listeners, it's worse. It gets worse with time. It's so fucking bad. And not only is it bad, right? It has the goal to turn to the audience and laugh in their face for thinking anything was going to get better at all at any point in this show. It's terrible. It is garbage. And we will continue on like this for the next 45 minutes to an hour as I break down in laborious detail everything that's wrong with the finale of Game of Thrones. No, we're going to talk about a better show.
I was like, that's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast. That's like way down on the list of podcasts. I don't think you and I would ever do Game of Thrones, although House of the Dragon would be fun.
I could not get myself to do that.
No, it would not.
Much. It does not get me up in the morning, unlike Pedro Pascal.
Pedro Pascal does get me up in the morning.
He's barely in this. Barely in this season. He still gets me up in the morning.
Well, before we dive into our recap episode, some quick business up front. Firstly, we do have a premiere date for Ahsoka. That was announced several weeks ago, but we're just getting around to saying that we know. It is August 23rd, right? I should have Googled this. I didn't.
Oh God, I probably should have written it down too. I put it on our calendar, but I didn't actually.
Ahsoka.
Yeah, I don't know what the actual release date is.
Google seems to think it is an animated show, but it is going to premiere August 23rd. Yay, I was right.
23rd. Well, it makes sense too, because I was like, I think when they said it was, I was like, it's a Wednesday, and I was like, oh, okay, now it makes more sense, because I think everybody was theorizing it was like the 31st, and I was like, that's literally not a Wednesday, but nice try.
Yes, so we know when that's coming out. We will be covering that alone, unless Boba Fett gets an episode, and then we'll have Wyatt on to complete the cycle.
Oh, right. We did promise.
We did promise. But yeah, we know when that is, but we will get to what we're covering in the meantime, because this show isn't going away. A sort of quick thing that I was made aware of. So I was talking to our friend Hope from J Guys and Jedi, and we were talking about the episode title, The Spies, of how I just saw Bradley roll his eyes. I'm probably right about the origin, but also it's kind of dumb. She pointed out a trivia fact that I wasn't aware of.
Okay.
So, you know, all the way back in episode 1, when Den hands the shard to the armorer and is like, hey, this is in like old Mandalorian or whatever, and maybe we can go down to the planet. Apparently that inscription actually translates, according to IMDb, into a passage from Exodus. Yeah. So Jon Favreau knew exactly what he was doing, and he definitely... Now, I looked up the passage that, what's it called? The IMDb claims it is, and it is about locusts showing up during the plagues, and specifically threatening to have locusts show up. I don't know why that was what they picked to put on there, but it ties into the spies. And I thought that was an interesting fact that lent credence to the theory that that's what that's named after.
Boo.
Jon Favreau, please show some understanding of the things that you're referencing before you reference them. Thank you. But I did promise I would not spend the next 45 minutes to an hour just fucking lambasting Jon Favreau.
No, we did that enough the whole entire season.
You can listen to the last 10 hours of content, right, and it's me doing that.
There you go.
The second is, we have another review.
Ooh.
And it popped up like the day before Steph's episode premiered. So we went 2 years without getting a review, and then we got two of them very quickly.
Okay.
So I'm now going to read it on the air. 5 stars. The title is The Gays Speak,
Ooh.
which I know, I love that. Charles and Bradley are great fun as the Mr. Peabody and Sherman of the Star Wars universe. Now
Okay.
pause.
Wait,
Bradley,
pause.
do you get this
Wait.
reference?
No, I don't understand that.
I didn't either, which is why I spent all day doing research on it.
Okay, what is that?
So Hope, again from J Guys and Jedi, was kind enough to explain it to me.
Okay,
because
great.
when I tried to Google a Mr. Peabody and Sherman,
Right.
what popped up was a terrible DreamWorks movie. And I watched the trailer and I went, okay, I kind of see what's going on, but I don't get it. So I
Right.
went to Hope and I was like, Hope, please explain this to me. Apparently it's an old cartoon. And the
Okay.
premise is Mr. Peabody is this incredibly intelligent dog
Love
that like
that.
knows a lot of things, and he's adopted this like human orphan boy, and they travel around through history. It's like a kid show. It's kind of like Doctor Who, I think, in
Right.
that regard. So I think I'm the dog. I think I'm the know-it-all dog. And
Okay.
you're just like the normal kid that's around. I think that's my understanding of what this meant.
It sounds like the premise of our podcast. I just,
It does sound
I'm
like
not,
it.
I mean, a little bit. You take me through legends, I guess, sometimes. So maybe, yeah, I guess I see it. Anyway, continue
I
with the
definitely
review,
see
but
it.
yeah.
So thank you. By the way, it was Walk In By 87 who left this review. So
Okay.
thank you, Walk In By 87, for making me go do research. I have now learned a thing that I didn't know earlier today. So that's very cool. I will now finish the rest of this review
Yes,
because I
please.
fucking love the rest of this review. Quote, every episode is full of witty queer hilarity that puts the anal in critical analysis. Listen today and start watching their careers with great interest. Highly recommend. End quote. I'm sorry. I read this. I was like leafing through. I was checking on my way up to work.
Yeah.
You could hear my laughter resonating through the parking garage when I got to putting the anal in critical analysis.
That is so fucking funny. I
That
can't.
is so fucking amazing. I love it so much. I
Oh
want
my.
that. I want that on like a coffee mug. I want that on a t-shirt. Like
That's really funny. So
that's
let that
the
be a lesson
thesis
to everybody
statement.
out there. If you leave a really hilarious review, we will definitely read it. And
We will definitely read it. Leave us a 5-star review
yes,
and we will read it on the show. So thank you, Walking By 87, for that wonderful review, and
I
thank
love
you
it.
for listening to the show. All right, well, let's talk about a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
The Mandalorian season 3 that we watched. Now, rather like Jon Favreau when he writes the scripts, I did not prepare too terribly much in advance for this.
We're taking inspiration.
We are following in the tradition of the show, and
Of
we are
course.
just kind of winging it as we go along.
100%. As is the spirit of Star Wars. You don't plan anything. You just do. There
You
is
just
no
make it up
try.
as you go along.
Right.
Just do. So I'll ask you, Bradley, I guess to kick us off, what was your overall impressions of this season?
So I said this either last episode or the episode before that the third season of any show is always going to be a fucking wild ride.
It was the last episode.
Okay, was it? Okay. And that is just this show proves that theory of mine that every third season of a show is always a weird fucking season. I kind of liked how chaotic and weird it was. There was just like little random ass episodes that were just so fucking weird that were great. And then there was just stuff that they kind of missed the mark, but it's okay because we know we're getting a fourth season. So it's like, all right, well, you tried something new, or you tried to throw a storyline in there and did not complete it, but that seems to be your overall style. So that's fine. But other than that, I thought it was an okay season. I didn't think it was anything super special. I think it did have its moments. But I wouldn't say it was like next level. I think if you were to compare it to the other two seasons, it would probably be mid.
That's where I would have put it. I would have put it below season 2 and above season 1, I think, in terms of just overall quality. My thing was that I appreciate a show that swings for the fences. that tries some weird things. And the parts for me of this season that really were interesting and stood out is where it either swung for the fences in a weird way, like with the Plaisir 5 episode, or even the Minds of Mandalore episode 2. I think that was another really good one. Or when the show went back to try to add some more nuance to something that hadn't gotten nuance in a previous season. Like, I liked the more fleshing out that they did with the Children of the Watch and how they evolved it from this isolationist cult to needing to re-examine its own doctrine to turning around and expanding out and becoming more tolerant and more able to work with other groups. I did like that. Where the show missed for me, I can appreciate where it's swinging, but there's times it fell back a lot, like the point Steph was making in our last episode, covering episode 8, where it felt kind of fan fiction-y. It felt like Dave and John kind of playing with their toys. I can appreciate what they're going for, even though there's, moments that didn't hit for me or story beats that didn't hit for me in the way that they maybe should have hit. So I mean, I like it overall. All Star Wars is good Star Wars. I'm going to say it's bad. I'm also not going to say that I'm probably going to put episodes of this on the way I put on random episodes from 1 or 2 sometimes.
And that's actually one of my gripes with this season, is that this season had too much of an overarching story versus the first 2, which kind of were more episodic and had that more fun adventure of the week episode, which I really do hope that they kind of go back to that formula in season 4 of adventure of the week, or just like a generic kind of this is what we're doing this episode and it has nothing to do with fucking Gideon taking over or something. You know what I mean? I kind of would hope for more of an adventure of the week, because I feel like it keeps the audience fresh and engaged. And whereas I appreciate the over story over the whole season as a regular viewer of Star Wars and someone who likes telling a complete story over a whole season, I think the general audience would appreciate it more if you just kept it light and fun every week and just did something random and kooky and weird every single time.
Yeah, I think a big part of my issue was, that shift from episodic storytelling to serialized storytelling. And so the difference is you can have an overarching meta plot, like in season 2 is the best example. Is established from the beginning, Mando needs to get Grogu to the Jedi. Everything he does in that season in some way relates to him getting the baby to the Jedi, but we have little adventures along the way. And some of them are directly connected, like the heiress with Bo-Katan, and some of them are just like random detour adventures, like the Frog Lady episode, or even to an extent Ahsoka, being a backdoor pilot to the Ahsoka show. Whereas season 3 was more of a serial in that every episode followed in from the last one. It was one cohesive story told all the way through. And I don't know if that served it as well as the episodic format. I think there's this sort of feeling with these sort of live action shows with Disney Plus that they're getting more and more afraid of being called quote unquote filler, that they're getting afraid of being accused of wasting the audience's time. So they feel like every episode, because looking back on it, Boba Fett was kind of affected by this too. They now feel like every episode has to significantly advance the plot in some way. Otherwise, it's not worth watching. They'll turn off Disney Plus and they'll turn on Netflix, or they'll turn on HBO. Oh, fuck me. It's Max now, isn't it?
I'm surprised you give it the respect of calling it HBO Max. I literally just call it HBO. So I haven't even recovered from its first crisis. Now I'm gonna just keep calling it HBO.
But the point is, you would turn on Netflix, you turn on Max, or
yeah.
That's the last time I'm ever going to say that, because by God, is that a terrible name for a streaming service?
It'll change in a month. That's fine.
It will. They will change it back to something. Christ.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's the concern of theirs, that they don't want to lose viewers. They want people, and they're also releasing these shows week to week, which is kind of shooting them in the foot, because I feel like a lot of the shows aren't written that way. Mando season 3 wasn't written that way, Andor wasn't written that way, and Book of Boba Fett wasn't written that way. And I feel like Ahsoka's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, Kenobi too. It just felt like they don't work necessarily. I mean, I don't mind the stretching it out, only because I like the water cooler kind of essentially that's what's going to happen next week kind of thing. I don't mind that, but then write your show like if that's what you're going to do, because that's not
Right.
how the shows are written. They are clearly written as a continuous follow through story, and then it's like they get cut at weird moments in the story just for the sake of being episodic, and it's like that's not, you can't do that.
That's what made 1 and 2 work so well, is that
Right.
they were a new adventure every week. Bad Batch is still doing this. Bad Batch is working pretty well because it's a new adventure every week. And then if we look at the overall arc of the season, we go, oh, here was the journey that we went on. Something like Andor, and I love Andor to pieces. I think it's one of the greatest TV shows ever made. But one of the criticisms that I do have of Andor is that when it was coming out, it was very bizarre to watch. And I know a lot of people who turned off Narkina 5 halfway through and were like, I'm not going to finish this week to week. I'm going to wait for it all to be there, and I'm going to watch the story all the way through to its conclusion. And I thought that was a perfectly fair way to approach the series. And Mando season 3, I started telling people about halfway through, maybe just wait until it finishes. Maybe just wait until it's all out and just binge watch it. Because otherwise I don't know if it's going to hit for you in the right way. I will ask you this, Bradley. Rewatching the show, because I remember we talked about it a little bit as it came out, and then we rewatched the show, obviously, to do our coverage, because we stuck to Bad Batch, which I think has served us really well. I think that was a good choice. Let me ask you, going back and rewatching it, has your opinion on anything changed from the first time you watched it to through our coverage of it, other than the fact that you fucking hate the title of The Spies?
Well, that's never going to change. But I think that we watching it back for this at least made it better, because I think watching it episodic week to week, it wasn't as strong. I remember watching it when it came out, and I would, it was because Bad Batch was on at the same time, and I'd watch both in the same day, and it was kind of overwhelming. It was just kind of like, okay, now I got to finish fucking Mandalorian. Like, now I got to finish Bad Batch. It just didn't, like, I don't know if that was just really smart of them to do at the same time, at least. And then even with this show being week to week, I just felt like it felt like a chore more than it did like, oh yay, Mandalorian's on
Definitely.
today. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And I feel like if it had, I don't get me wrong, I actually hate binge watching. I hate having it all at the same time, because I always feel like if I don't hurry up and finish it, someone's going to spoil something for me, because I only watched the first 3 episodes and they've watched 6 episodes. So I don't love the binge format, the Netflix formula, but in this particular case, it would have served better, because I feel like The Mandalorian and Star Wars, they all feel like movies. They're just really long movies. And I feel like the problem is we needed to get all this movie at once, because this one just didn't quite work for me week to week. I just didn't feel super engaged to the point where I was like, fuck yeah, I gotta watch it next week. Unless it was like there was like 1 or 2 that I was like, oh yeah, this fucking slaps. Like,
The minute
Bo
Bo-Katan whipped out the Darksaber and was standing there, at that one I was excited to watch the next week. No, I agree with you 100% of that being an impression. I definitely liked it a lot more on the second viewing.
for sure.
Because I remember being sort of neutral about it. I remember being sort of, yeah, this is The Mandalorian. I mean, most of the nights that I stayed up to watch something, I was either already up at midnight and I was like, what's 45 more minutes? Or I had stayed up to watch Bad Batch, and again, what's another 45 more minutes? Or it was something I was concerned somebody was going to spoil something for me. Because that was happening a lot. Like, you're not on Twitter, but unfortunately I am.
Right.
People on Twitter do not know how to fucking behave. I love my Twitter friends dearly. I love the sort of corner of the Twitter sphere that I inhabit. But those motherfuckers don't know how to keep their spoilers to themselves for 10 goddamn minutes. And like, they put little dot things, and I'm like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't stop me from seeing it. Stop doing this. So to be like, oh, I don't want to mute people because I always forget to unmute them.
Right.
And I'm like, so sometimes I would just stay up and force myself through it, because like, why not? If the choice is between be exhausted or be spoiled, sometimes I pick being exhausted. So I definitely enjoyed it on the second time when I knew what was coming and I could like breathe, take it easy. Although I will say, TikTok did not spoil Ahmad Best, or no, Twitter did not spoil Ahmad Best for me. TikTok did. That's not any of my people I follow on Twitter's fault. That was TikTok. But Yeah, generally, there's a whole nother discussion had to be had about spoiler culture and like you have
Right.
to watch things right as they come out. You can't wait. I envy people who are not plugged into the sphere like I am. Like, I have made no bones about the fact that my experience playing Jedi Survivor has been unbelievably frustrating. And the reason it's been frustrating is because of everything I'm working on right now, I have two major projects that I'm working on outside of work, in addition to this podcast that I've been having to do. And I've been having health issues. And I've been trying to balance a trip that's coming up literally this weekend, where as we're recording this, it will have just happened when you're hearing it. I wasn't able to play Survivor for like a week. And people, mostly old friends of mine from like my early college days before I knew you, were messaging me like, hey, I have a question about this and X thing in Jedi Survivor. And then they would say the thing and I would be like, yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm
Right.
on Coruscant. I'm on the first level of the game.
Yeah.
So thanks. I haven't gotten to that yet. Maybe check and see. I know I'm the Star Wars guy, but I have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I felt some frustration when Mando was coming out too, because yeah, that is the flip side of that water cooler conversation, is you feel like you have to watch it
Right.
as soon as it comes out. I wish they would premiere these things at like 9 o'clock my time, like midnight your time.
Yeah. You think that they would.
It's
It
really
is.
bizarre.
It is bizarre that it's
What is
LA
it?
midnight.
It's Max does that. I think
Yes.
Max premieres
Yes.
it, and I think I remember Prime does it that way too, because I
I
remember
at
watching
least
Rings of
remember.
Power.
I think so. Yeah, because I remember. I think that's what was it, House of the Dragon, where I was like, oh, I would watch it at like midnight or whatever,
The
and it's
House of the
like,
Dragon, yeah.
yeah, and it was like 9 for you, and then I'd be
It was
like,
9 for me. And then we
yeah,
would text each other because
right. Be
this
like,
may
I'm going to bed, but
surprise
like, I just finished it. Yeah.
this may surprise listeners of the podcast, but Bradley and I do talk a lot about a lot of other things besides Star Wars. But yeah, remember it was that way because you would stay up till midnight, which is reasonable-ish, and I was already up at 9 o'clock.
Right.
I was still up, and so we would, message each other, and you'd be like at 1 a.m. your time, you'd be like, "I'm going to bed, but I really liked that episode," or "That episode was really boring," or "I sure thought it was weird when that lady banged her uncle."
Right.
House of the Dragon is a fucking insane show. But yeah, I didn't really get that with The Mandalorian with people. I think in a way because it premieres so late. I wish
Yeah,
they
and
would
even
premiere them.
even with our schedule, like it would be like you would watch it at like midnight, and then I would just wait in the morning and just wait for it to come on in the morning because I just don't have the time to stay up till 3 a.m. to watch fucking Mandalorian and Bad Batch. Like I just couldn't do it. So I would just be like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna wake up in the morning, have to watch it first thing before I go to work, or wake up an hour early just so I can watch one of them at least.
Right.
And then honestly, I even got to the point where I was trying to watch like Bad Batch like in the shower and then also watch Mandalorian like during breakfast. And it was like it's so hard to do that. But I don't like how their release format is right now. And honestly, though, Ahsoka is gonna be the bane of my existence because
Oh
of this
my
format.
god. Because I'm gonna have to stay up for that one. Like
Yep.
the nature of the show is such I physically will not be able to avoid spoilers for
100%.
that show. I will have to stay awake for it.
I will have to literally, I've never done this before. I will probably have to turn my phone off when I go to bed. I've never done that before in my life. I feel like I'm going to have to turn it off and then hope that my circadian rhythm wakes me up at a normal time. And then I am able to just turn on Disney Plus the second I wake up and I can just eat breakfast and just watch Ahsoka with no spoilers.
We've completely tangented, but I think it's a tangent worth having. So I'm mostly
fair.
fine with it.
It was a tangent, but it had to do with the season as a whole.
Well, and I think
To an extent.
it's worth having that conversation too, because you can't really, for us as like content creators, we can't really divorce Star Wars from the fan sphere, because we kind of have to be plugged into an extent to what's going on. Me more so than you. You're more in the latter category, but even you have to I have to make sure I'm watching it at a certain time. I want to make sure somebody is not mentioning to me what happened. I'm on Twitter and TikTok and all of the various social medias, so I extra have to do this. But somebody like my friend, like I have friends who are like, yeah, I'll watch the show like when it finishes airing and don't notice a damn thing about it at all. And I'm like, how do you live like this when it comes to a Star Wars? Like, I don't get it. But then I have things like that I basically barely follow and so can enjoy at my own leisure. Those things are generally Magic the Gathering stories because I am a huge nerd.
I can't.
Well, I'll ask you this then. What was we won't do the ranking this time because I didn't prepare it and you didn't prepare it. Instead,
Okay.
we'll go, we'll pull up an episode list. What was
Uh-huh.
your favorite episode of the season and what was your least favorite episode of the season?
Okay, this is a hard one.
I know I sprung this on you because, again, we didn't
Yeah.
plan this. Rather like Jon Favreau, we did not plan this episode.
So I have an answer prepared, even though I'm not prepared to answer. I still
I
have
have an answer prepared even though I don't have it prepared. Wow.
Right.
Fantastic. I love that for you.
So this is my answer to that. It's a very
Okay.
complicated roundabout answer to that question. So the way I look at the season is like episode 7 and 8. I consider that kind of one episode. That's the finale. So I can't
Okay.
really say that.
I
Like,
can already tell that you're going to cheat on this answer, but please continue with whatever bullshit you're about to try to justify to me to avoid answering the question I sprung on you.
Gotcha. So I kind of tie a little bit with my favorite. I'm gonna lean more towards my favorite of the season is the one that has nothing to do with the season at all, and that
Okay.
would be chapter 19, The Convert, because
Interesting.
it has nothing to do with the season as a whole. I love the just side adventure quests that we go on with these different characters. I don't know, something about it. Like we gave Book of Boba Fett shit for doing that with the Mandalorian episode, but like this episode and this season of the Mandalorian, I don't know why it just works for me. I love Rangers of the New Republic. I think it works really well in this season. I mean, The Convert. But no, I just thought I loved the story. I love the actors. I think it was really well done. And it was just really fucking cool to see just this side story that just is more interesting to me than some of the stuff Mando was doing this season. A close second would be Guns for Hire, only because I love the sheer campiness and just randomness of that episode. It was just so enjoyable to watch. It's not necessarily the best episode, it's just the most fun. So I don't know. That's my close second. My least favorite episode. Oof, this is also going to be controversial.
Okay.
My least favorite is everything in the episode but the rescue of Grogu, and that would be chapter 20, The Foundling.
Yeah. So what we're going to do for everything you're about to say, right, is we're going to take the Ahmad Best scene and we're going to
Yes.
put it in a little bubble. And we're going to
Okay.
put that little bubble over to the side. So keep in mind, listeners, and also Ahmad Best, if you're listening, everything Bradley's about to say about the episode does not include that scene. That
Right.
scene is perfect. There is nothing wrong with it. Bradley, please continue.
Everything else in that episode is just okay. Or it's just like it's not a very interesting story. It's just like a weird, like, let's go do this random thing that doesn't further the plot that much. I mean, Grogu doesn't even go with them. It's just like a weird, like the armorer is babysitting while Mando goes and rescues a kid from a monster. Like, it's just like, why? Why are we doing this? This doesn't serve anything. I don't know. I just didn't care for the episode. I mean, granted, gave us one of the best fucking flashbacks of all time, and it was a fucking banger of a flashback. But other than that, and honestly, you could take that scene and put it in a different episode, and it would still, it would be really good. So I don't know. I just didn't care. That was just my least favorite. Not that the episode is bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the most least interesting, other than the flashback scene. And I think the flashback scene actually saves it from being, in my eyes, less than a 6, like on the scale of 1 to 10. Like, because if it didn't have that flashback scene in it, it would be like a 4.
I completely respect your correct opinion.
Okay, great. I'm
I
glad
had
we
almost
agree.
the same opinion of the episode. I love it when we agree. The listeners don't, but I love it when
Of
we
course.
agree. Because we know they're here for blood. For my most favorite, I'm gonna do a bizarre choice here. I'm gonna pick a really strange one. I'm gonna say my favorite is chapter 5, chapter 21, The Pirate, the
Oh,
Carson
okay.
Teva episode. I love to see Carson Teva getting the spotlight while still tying directly into the main plot of The Mandalorian. It's a fun episode. There's a villain and we fight the villain and it is great. There are stakes. in the episode. The villains are directly threatening a thing that we care about and a person that we care about in Grief Karga. And we just get all sorts of fun Mandalorian fighting action, which was great. The anti-alien bias I could have lived without, but other than that, I really enjoyed the episode. I thought it was fantastic. And of them all, I think other than Guns for Hire, it was the most fun I had watching an episode this season. Right. Guns for Hire lost out only because I think it has a lot of characterization problems when it comes to Bo-Katan and Din's interaction. I think that's what put it slightly below for me. So I'm going to go with my favorite of the season was the pirate. My least favorite, also going to be controversial. The runner-up was The Return. Because for all its standout moments, it also had tons of missed opportunities.
Right.
Just missed opportunity after missed opportunity. It wants to feel like an epic finale, but doesn't quite reach that level of epicness. However, it was slightly beat out for me by Chapter 17, The Apostate. The Apostate is nothing but setup. There is no narrative through arc throughout The Apostate. I think if the Pelimoto scene from the beginning of the Mines of Mandalore had been included in the episode, it would have ranked higher. Because the entire episode arc would have been Din preparing to go to Mandalore. And you do all of the scenes, and then the Pelimoto scene, and then the Bo-Katan scene, and you end with him going off to Mandalore, and that would have been better. But as it stands, we have an episode that is nothing but set up for plot points that are not going to pay off for 6, 7, 8 episodes. And I felt like it was the weakest. And I felt like of all of the episodes that I watched after the fact, it was the one that I felt most like I was just getting through to get to the others.
Well, and that's because it is a bridge episode, because the premiere of season 3 is the Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett. That is the actual premiere. So the fact that this is really just the second episode to set up the plot of the season versus the first episode, which is the actual premiere, it's like it's just so disconnected, and they missed an opportunity. And there is some structural problems in the beginning of season 3, especially with the connection of episode 2 leading into episode 3, with they took the scenes from the dogfight, and then randomly cut to Coruscant and have our side adventure randomly in episode 3. Doesn't work. That stuff needed to be in episode 2, and it doesn't make any sense. And I don't know who came up with the structure of this season and was like,
John Favreau. We know who it was. It was John Favreau.
But that is one of my big gripes about this season, is that it's just structurally a mess, and it's because it's borrowing its structure from Book of Boba Fett, and it's just like, hey, you remember this show that also happens at the same time? Yeah, we're gonna kind of awkwardly do them together, but not really. Like, I don't know. Overall, though, it was a mid season, and it was
I hate that word with a blinding, furious passion, because it is being misused by men on the internet. However, I will say your use of it is accurate. It is not a bad season, but it is also not a great season.
Right. Just lots of missed opportunities.
Yes. And it didn't feel to me, it felt to me like simultaneously it went weird enough to be good, but not weird enough to be great. Which leads me nicely into our, Bradley, do you have any final thoughts on the season as a whole? Any punctuation mark you want to put on this? Any 18,000 Return of the King fucking endings that you want to do for this show? I was recently reminded how that is my favorite movie of all time. So...
I mean, my period on season 3 final statement is just, yeah, it was good. I liked it. I mean, I think when I go back and watch season 1, season 2, and season 3 as like a whole, or I'll go for season 4 or something like that, it's gonna be the one that I struggle to get through, because I think the other two, season 2 in particular, is a lot more stronger than both of them. But I think that it's going to fall kind of like, oof, I got to get through this one just to get to the 4th season. Like, ugh, I don't want to do this right now. I think that's going to be my takeaway. However, I think the bright spots in season 3 will keep me going.
My final thought on the season as a whole, punctuation to 10 to 12 hours of content that I have recorded on this season.
Right.
are Jon Favreau. I personally, I cannot speak for everyone, but I personally accept your season-long apology for the treatment of Bo-Katan Kryze in season 2. Now please hire some writers that aren't Dave Filoni or Noah Clore. Doesn't even have to be me. Hire some other writers, please.
Also, just a little tip for him. At least get a woman on your staff
Yes,
to write
make one
something.
of those writers a woman.
A woman, please, just one.
Preferably more than one, but
Right.
definitely at least one.
At least minimum, just so you can see like maybe a woman's perspective on how women would be written. I don't know. I just thought, just a little thought.
We support the WGA and the strike that is currently still ongoing as we record these episodes.
I was gonna say that's such a great thing. I'm curious to see how much longer it'll go on. Also, if we'll make it through our next bit of show as the strike goes on.
I predict we are now seeing the point, and we skipped some news because we recorded this a couple of days earlier than we usually would, and also we didn't really want to do a news segment at the beginning, but it was announced today that what the release dates for the next Star Wars movies are going to be, and they do seem to have pushed one of them, which leads credence to my theory that the Rey movie wasn't quite ready to go into pre-production when the writer's strike happened, and now it has to be pushed back. So we're seeing studios start to push things. They're starting to run out of content. This could all end if you would just pay the writers what they want. Anyway, no studio executives are listening to this show.
Right.
So we could just proceed on. That is the end of our Mandalorian season 3 coverage, and frankly, I'm a little underwhelmed.
That's okay. We have bright
like
suns to look forward to, though.
Oh, fuck off. It's weird coming to the end of this season, because when we finished Obi-Wan Kenobi, I looked back and I was like, man, I had a great time doing that. And I looked back on Andor, I was like, man, I had a great time covering that, especially our retrospective with Aaron put like a great exclamation mark on the ending of that. Finishing up Mando season 3, I was like, man, I loved getting to hang out with a bunch of people who I like talking to. Also, there was a show that I looked at.
There was a show there somewhere.
At one point. Okay. But going forward, Bradley, do we want to talk about what we are doing between now and August the 23rd?
Yeah, let's do it.
Well, the first thing we're doing is we're taking a week off so that I can fly to Pennsylvania and also deal with some of the 18,000 things that are happening to me right now. But after we take a week off to breathe, what will we be doing next, Bradley?
We're going to be covering Visions season 1.
Yes, I know season 2 just came out. I watched it. It was fantastic. But Bradley and I did make the decision that we felt like our initial reaction episode to season 1 didn't really give it the coverage it deserved. And now that we've had some time to think about it, and I've had some time to watch some of the anime that was made by the studios, thanks to my boyfriend, who is a massive weeb, and who is delighted about where Star Wars Celebration is taking place in 2025, we have decided to go back and look at season 1. We're going to put season 1 in between now and Ahsoka. So, Bradley, if you looked at our schedule, does that come out to about one a week?
Yeah, I've kind of done it to where, so basically what's going to happen is it'll be about one a week. We might have to do 2 at some point, because once we get right up onto Ahsoka, we're going to have to release our episode 0. And so what I'll do is the week before episode 0 comes out, we'll have to squeeze in 2 just to kind of make it finish.
So you know what this
basically
does? You know what this does? It gives us some breathing room for when they inevitably push the show back.
Right.
Then we'll have some breathing room to finish Visions season 1.
Or they'll be vindictive and they'll do a 2-episode premiere on the 23rd and then fuck our schedule again.
Please don't. The hardest part, listeners, the hardest part of making Goldsquadrongays is the fucking schedule. Like, I promise you, our production meetings are at least 70%. When the fuck are we covering this? Exactly. It's mental trying to make this show.
For sure.
I cannot believe we've been doing this for over 2 years.
I know.
It still feels like we're making it up as we go along.
And we are.
When we are. Alrighty. Plugs.
Finally, yes, you remembered this time. Pluggables.
Yes, I remembered this time. I'm so fucking mad at myself because Steph is on for Light and Dice. in a guest spot role. And I forgot to mention it while she was on. I was like, God damn it, I hate everything right now.
I can't.
You can find me outside of the show on For Light and Dice, a Star Wars TTRPG actual play podcast DM'd by our friend Chris from Darkside Divas, who was recently on one of our Bad Batch episodes, and also starring Hope from Jedi and Jedi, who helpfully provided us research at the beginning of this episode, and Jess from Roof Helps Pod Race, as well as our friend Colton, who was just on episode 6 of The Mandalorian, and Nathan, who was also on our Bad Batch coverage. So definitely give For Light and Dice a listen. We are coming up, barreling towards our season finale, which is very exciting for all of us. As far as Bradley's pluggables, right now we are plugging Temptation Island, which, don't tell me, I'm not going to look this up. I'm going to try to remember it. It is premiering on USA Network on June 16th?
You were close.
June 13th.
So it actually, as of this episode airing, it has already aired. It was last Wednesday was when it aired. So June 14th is when it aired. So as this episode airs, it was last week.
As this episode is being recorded, it will air tomorrow. As this episode airs,
yes,
you could have just watched it yesterday.
So everybody can now go watch the premiere episode of Temptation Island on USA Network. I was the travel coordinator. I flew out to Hawaii. We shot the show out there for like 2 months. It was fantastic. We were on the Big Island. It's a very dramatic show, very funny. At least if you like reality and drama and terrible, awful people who are amazing and sexy and hot. So if you like sexy, hot people cheating on each other, this is the show for you.
So hilarious to me that you were filming this show at the same time we were recording our Andor coverage.
So I just love the dynamics of my life.
We did, I think, the episode with Claire, and then you like got on a plane like the next day, and the rest of our Andor coverage, you were shooting this Temptation Island in Hawaii.
It was a wild ride.
So stay tuned for when we get all of the hot people from Temptation Island on to help us cover Ahsoka.
Imagine if they actually did that. That'd be fun.
I'm just kidding. They are way too busy being hot in LA.
Being hot in LA. Yep.
Alrighty, well, Bradley, go ahead and run the socials, and we'll be back with Star Wars Visions Season 1.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gaze. Did Charles fuck something up? Send us a message at goldsquadrongaze@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Squad Gaze. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gaze. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gaze, where we post the podcast as well as exclusive content. Please join us next week and every week for more of Gold Squadron Gaze.
Welcome to the show, Marvelous Gaze, the show where two Marvel-loving gays watch every episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because we hate ourselves.
We do.
I'm your host, Bradley Brower.